Ladies, gentlemen of the DCU, today we've got quite a few things to speak about. I mean, this is a news roundup after all, but some sweet updates on the DCU with some brand new reports on DCU projects that I really want to dive into. We've got some sweet updates on Superman Legacy filming, guys. We're getting very close to March, and you know what that means. We've got some updates on the Penguin with regards to wrapping filming. Maybe a Bruce Wayne cameo. Are we gonna get a Bruce Wayne? Some DCU Batman stuff, and my god, am I gonna get some dislikes on this video, or maybe not? We're gonna have to wait and see when we talk about that. And some hoo-ha with regards to Superman and Lois, and the reason why it was cancelled perhaps being down to not wanting competition for Superman Legacy. But how could they do that when we've got the Batman? So we need to get into all of this. But first of all, I want to talk about these DCU updates. Now, this is really intriguing. I first saw this from DC Film News. They're pulling from the report known, or the website, if you will, outlet, the Trailblazer. Now, the Trailblazer is using Production Weekly. Now, you may have heard about Production Weekly before. So Production Weekly, long story short, is essentially a website, this industry tool that you can sign up to get production information on. It's just the thing is, things can change. So actually, my best example would be the Batman Part 2. If you guys remember, we heard that it was originally slated for production in November, then it changed to this tentative filming date for March of this year. But even though that is probably legitimate, it might not be the case anymore if you're kind of in the know. It doesn't seem likely, with absolutely nothing out there with the Batman Part 2, that it would be filming next month, the same month as Superman Legacy, and look how far they are ahead. But that doesn't mean that when they reported that it wasn't accurate. It just means that they set a date down and, you know, they were hoping to aim for it. So the thing about Production Weekly is as well, you can get some other information out there with regards to productions. And now we've got a couple of tidbits about some DCU projects. So the first thing is a plot synopsis, an actual log line for DCU's Waller. And it goes as follows: centered around Amanda Waller and her relationship with her daughter, Leota. If there's one government bureaucrat who shouldn't be messed with, it's Amanda Waller, founder of the infamous Task Force X, better known as the Suicide Squad. Now, the thing is, people are freaking out about this online. And what I mean by the freaking out thing is like, is that it? Is that all there is to the Waller show? Who asked for this? What is the DCU? But this is the thing. It is like the most basic logline of all loglines that you could kind of put out there, especially in that of Production Weekly. And I do believe that this is like a legit logline, but it doesn't reflect that of what the series will really dive into in terms of, you know, all the different things it can touch in its story. Now, I do believe that, yeah, it will be centered around Amanda Waller and her daughter Leota. It is a spin-off of Peacemaker. I believe they'll even be using that plot point from the end of Peacemaker, and where Amanda Waller's daughter Leota actually speaks up about her mother at a press conference about what she's been up to with, you know, Task Force X and everything like that. That's obviously going to be like the starting point, even though you can say to me, but Peacemaker might not be canon. As I've said before, I think most of it will be canon. Most of it fits within the continuity of the DCU. The only thing they need to really change is the Justice League cameo at the end. So I do believe that plot point that you're kind of seeing on screen right now will be followed with her reacting like, what the hell? But do you really think that that's just going to be the whole show? Like, they're going to go get tea and coffee every day and just talk out their mother and daughter relationship? No, like, this is in the DCU, but there'll be all kinds of other things that it gets into which I can't even comprehend right now. I mean, let me know your theories down in the comments below. It's just when you're putting a basic ass plot line out there, and within industry tools you can kind of find out what it is, well, just in case people just like Production Weekly can get a hold of that, you don't want to put major spoilers there. You'll put the most basic premise. So, if you're freaking out over Waller because you don't think that's very interesting, don't kid yourself. That's not going to literally be it. Now, Trailblazer also go on to say, with regards to what they've got from Production Weekly, that Booster Gold and Waller and Lanterns are rumored to be in active development basically right about now. Now, this does actually make sense because these shows, like Waller, for example, would have been in active development a bit sooner if it wasn't for the strikes. Don't forget, I really need to stress this. I think I stress it all the time. But the strikes really did halt things so much. I know that sounds obvious, but a lot of people ask me questions being like, why isn't this happening? Why isn't that happening? And it's just like, do you forget that like from May and then June with the actors strike, but May with the writers strike, all the way until like October, November, that's most of 2023, really. A lot of things couldn't really progress as much as they would have liked. So that's why I think some things in the DCU, as James Gunn said, and I think this connects as well, have shuffled around a little bit with regards to the release order. I mean, the release order in the DCU Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters announcement video was never like die-hard firm, but it did start off with Creature Commandos, Waller, and then Superman Legacy. So I do actually believe they would have ideally wanted to start Waller a little bit earlier, but now everything is swinging. And recently, a year after announcing Gods and Monsters, James Gunn did come out of that thread, don't forget, in where he says, you know, episodes of Creature Commandos are being finished that will release later this year. At least 2 more projects are gearing up to go in the next couple of months. Amazing scripts keep coming in, and incredible talent are being attached to new projects, planned and unplanned. Thank you. So I do think this is all in the same kind of boat, if you know what I mean. It's starting to sell the way it should be. Things are gearing up. Active development doesn't necessarily mean that they're starting to shoot right now. It just means that the ball can finally really start getting momentum again. And I think for me, the most hyped thing to be in active development is absolutely lanterns. Now, speaking of lanterns, the next tidbit from the Trailblazer is something that I think all of us thought anyway. Nathan Fillion is rumored to reprise his Superman Legacy role as Guy Gardner in Lanterns. Now, you may feel like you've heard this before. I mean, on top of maybe just believing it anyway, but we have covered this before, I believe, because it was a leak on the DCEU Leaks Reddit page in one of their threads. I don't know when I covered it. Like, the months blend into one with how much DC news that I cover. They did say that Guy Gardner would be in Lanterns, and this just is expected. I think all while Gunn is saying that, you know, I'm not bringing in characters to literally set up this. I do believe that. But at the end of the day, let's just say if you do bring in the engineer into Superman Legacy, it is kind of like Loki. Hey, you'll kind of see her again in The Authority, right? The movie. Same with Guy Gardner. He is going to be our kind of introduction into Lanterns, if you will. Just Lanterns in general, but also Lanterns the show. I don't think they're going to literally be like, hey, you'll see me next in the Lanterns show. Make sure you subscribe to Max. I don't think it's going to be anything as, you know, on the nose like that. But once we see that character in Superman Legacy, once we see what Nathan Fillion's Guy Gardner's like, whatever kind of teasing dialogue he might have with other characters, whether that's about the lore of Lanterns, whether that's, who knows what they could fit in there, we could see him pop up. Well, it seems that we are going to see him pop up again in the show, which does indeed surround Hal Jordan and John Stewart, who are, it's described as space cops on Precinct Earth. Very true detective style. I absolutely love that comparison. And they stumble across this ancient horror that is going to, you know, ripple throughout their overarching story of the DCU. And you may have heard me say it once, twice, and many times before. I do think this would be one of the main beating hearts and threads of the main plot of the DCU, like whatever the big thing that they might want to establish and sew and weave between their grand story in Chapter 1. Now, in Superman Legacy news, very quickly here, a little brief update to the situation that happened with the DCU drama, if you will, that I covered on Saturday. Bassem Youssef came out with a video on Twitter or whatever social medias he has, and he basically said exactly what James Gunn was saying. He explained the situation, how it did feel a certain way. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out that previous video, but long story short, there isn't really too much news other than actually the role that Bassem Youssef lost did kind of open up some insights into a little bit of a plot leak that I guess indirectly gets confirmed as a result of this drama that apparently is still being kept in the film. It's also rumors and leaks are still saying. It's just that they've changed the location from the Middle East to apparently Eastern Europe. So that is still something that is a rumor and very interesting if you want to know a little bit more about that and what that leak could be. But as for the whole situation, it seemed to be a bit of a misunderstanding that seems to have been, you know, basically nipped in the bud. But in some exciting Superman Legacy news, I really like this tidbit. So exclusive from DC Film News here, once again, I recommend following them on Twitter, guys. Superman Legacy to film in Cleveland, the birthplace of the Man of Steel. The state of Ohio recently awarded Legacy over $11 $11 million in tax credits for this commitment. They go and say that the film under the working title Genesis was among 23 productions awarded a tax credit to film in the state. And that could actually indeed be the working title if that was the one used amongst the 23. I mean, to be fair, I guess it's been narrowed down, but Genesis could make sense. It's like the kind of beginning of the DCU. I mean, technically that's Creature Commandos, but it's the first look in the live action sense of bringing the DCU into fruition. So maybe it is Genesis, but I find this really cool anyway that Superman Legacy is filming in Cleveland. If any of you live near here, I mean, maybe they wanted to keep this quiet, but they could be filming here. I don't know if I want to say soon, who really knows, but keep an eye out. But it's awesome that they're filming in basically the birthplace of Superman. Now, in other news that DC Film News shared with regards to Superman Legacy, they said that Nicholas Hoult has arrived to Atlanta to film Superman Legacy in March, and you can see him there. He's got quite a shaved head. It's not completely bald, obviously. You could say that maybe Nicholas Hoult likes a shaved head, so maybe it's got nothing to do with him being Lex Luthor, but maybe you could argue maybe he shaved it really short so we could kind of get into the character, and then all they need to do is completely shave it off in the makeup trailer. I don't know, I'm not going to get into too much speculation there, but I do want to give a shout out to this artist. If you want to see a good look at what Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor could look like, this artist is absolutely fantastic. He goes by the name of Job Hutz on Twitter, and look at this. I mean, as I said in a stream, when I showcased this off, I think you can borderline take this as a literal, almost, I mean, it's not an official look, but I almost want to say you can take it like that, because the way, some artists such as Job Hutz here capture human likeness with their artworks is remarkable, to the point of where that is Nicholas Hoult, and he's removed the hair, so as a result, since we know James Gunn said he is going to be bald, and he's wearing a suit there, basically a Luthor-looking suit, I mean, how can this not basically be what Luthor's going to look like in the movie? I mean, I know some of you are going to say, don't get too far ahead of yourself, but I mean, look at it. It's amazing. And for anyone who was like, I kind of like Nicholas Hoult as Luthor, but I don't know, maybe this helps you out. I mean, I think it should. Look at it. It's great. Now, in some Batverse news, yes, can you believe it? Matt Reeves' Batverse. Well, for the Penguin, according to production designer Kalina Ivanov, she said that production wraps today at the time on February 17th. And then lo and behold, we had Carmen Ejogo, who I recently saw in True Detective Season 3, really enjoyed that, saying, "We made something epic, can't wait to share it with you." And you can see that on her Instagram. And it's got hashtag it's a wrap. Penguin's wrapped filming, guys. It's wrapped filming. Could we be seeing footage very soon? You know my thoughts on that. I think it's an any day now kind of situation. And again, guys, we're just one step closer to just seeing some Pengy Peak footage. But in related news, Robert Pattinson, could he be appearing in The Penguin? This has been a long-standing theory that we've talked about God knows how many times on the channel in the discussion series, but this seemed to be making the rounds, this image right here, and people were saying, so apparently Robert Pattinson was seen on the set of The Penguin. I don't know if that is accurate. This is the kind of thing that gets around that. I mean, I'm not calling this person a liar, but, I tried digging into this, and it's kind of like, where did you hear this from? But I think the thing that is mainly getting people to speculate that people saw this photo of Robert Pattinson, I believe, at an airport in LA a couple of weeks ago, and they're connecting that to mean that he may have appeared as Bruce Wayne in the Penguin series, which, I've always said that I guess you could have Batman in there, you could have Bruce Wayne, but I believe more if it was a Bruce Wayne scene. I'm really stuck on that one. I've always been stuck on that one. Some of you are so convinced, but I've never been truly convinced. I'm like, would they really bring in Batman? I mean, I can imagine it, but would it be Bruce Wayne? We're honestly just going to have to wait and see. I mean, dude even looks like the Drifter here, but in all reality, he could have just been getting on a plane to go anywhere. So I want to know why people are thinking even more of this when that might not be the case. People might say, even besides this, I thought that Pattinson was going to be in the Penguin regardless, so I still think he's going to be in the Penguin. Maybe. I mean, it makes sense, right? Also, especially as to how this bridges the gap between Part 1 and Part 2. And, we're going to get a little teaser, I'm very confident, of, what Part 2's beginnings are going to look look like with the end of the Penguin series. But yeah, there's not much else to say here. I wouldn't say that Pattinson was literally seen on the set of the Penguin. It's just that this photo seemed to take off. But I wanted to talk about it regardless to kind of get a little bit of conversation flowing there amongst the Batverse fans. So let me know what you think. Now, another thing I wanted to talk about today is something that I've been tagged in so many times. Alan Ritchson spoke about what everyone is saying with regards to him playing Batman. He said, the fact that people are interested in me playing Batman is a real honor and privilege. I would absolutely love to play him. He also got asked about it in a comicbook.com interview, and he said he's one of the most iconic characters of all time, and that would be great. Again, this isn't so much news. It's just, I think there's so much Alan Ritchson, Batman fan casting at the minute. I feel like it's the new Jensen Ackles fan casting for Batman. Now, I want to preface this by saying I see him as Batman. I see him as a Batman. Let me rephrase that. I see him in the suit. It's not like I don't see these things before anyone goes crazy at me. I think Alan Ritchson's a great actor. I've been following him for years and years and years. I loved him as Hawk in Titans. I've watched both seasons of Reacher. I think this is where a lot of people are getting on board because, don't get me wrong, he could really play the absolutely huge tank of a Batman in a DCU. And just a lot of people, I get why they see it. The age of Alan Ritchson. He's quite a capable actor. But believe it or not, even though I identify all of those things, I just want to, reiterate it here for anyone who hasn't heard my take on this before. It's still not exactly who I would sign off on for Batman. Now, that's not to say if, let's just say, in the future this gets announced. It's the kind of thing where I see a comment like, oh, Boba, you said this about Alan Ritchson, now he's Batman. It's not like I hate it or anything. I would still be game to see him if that was literally the deadline article of 2025, 2026. The way I can kind of explain it to you is I have my Batman vibe check, and what it tells me is a similar situation to when the front runners for Clark Kent and Lois Lane were happening, right? We had Nicholas Hoult as well as David Corenswet and other actors in the runnings for Clark Kent Superman. While many people, before somebody types it, because I've seen someone type it before, dude, who wanted Nicholas Hoult for Clark Kent? I saw so many people say that they wanted Nicholas Hoult as the new Superman. But I said from day one, all while I can see a version of Nicholas Hoult as Clark Kent in this universe, he's still not who I would sign off on. I always say if I kind of put my casting director hat on, you don't only go through necessarily an actor's capabilities, because think how many actors who are very prestigious try out for roles, but there is also, believe it or not, a vibe check to a casting director's decision. Do they really kind of fit what you kind of have in mind for the character, even talent aside almost, right? Not really saying that, by the way, but there's a bit of an ebb and flow to all this. It's not exactly a straight up science like 1+1. That's why, to kind of bring it back into what I was saying, I didn't vibe with Nicholas Hoult, all while understanding that he's a great actor, and I can almost see a version of him as like a Elseworlds Clark, I guess, if you really wanted to make a movie. But should he be the Superman and Clark of this movie, of the DCU? I was like, no. So again, to stress here, Alan Ritchson, same sentiment. I can see it almost. He could be Batman. But is he the Batman, I think? If I had a front runner list and there was maybe another dude there, I would probably say, similar to Nicholas Hoult, I don't think so, but there's plenty of people who do really want that. But for me, no. I would love Alan Ritchson, though, in a DCU. People were like laughing at me in one of my recent videos when I brought this topic up. And I said, if they did a JSA project, I would love a modern iteration of Wildcat. Yes, he would be a sick Wildcat, or a Captain Atom. The list goes on. I don't know. I would love to know your thoughts on this. Even if he was Owlman, turning over that hourglass in the DCU and was just being that hero. I want a place for him in the DCU, but I don't think he is who I have in mind for DCU Batman. But hey, I'm not in charge, so let me know what you think of my thoughts there. You may completely disagree with me. So the last subject that I want to get into in today's video is as I said earlier, hoo-ha, if you will, surrounding Superman and Lois. And I do kind of get it. So if you haven't heard already, Superman and Lois kind of got canned, or it was ending, if you will, but arguably the thing here is that, it could have technically have gone on. So the rep summarized what Brad Schwartz, I believe president of the CW, was saying. Schwartz noted that if these 4 series continue to perform from a ratings perspective and at their current cost, there's no reason why you wouldn't keep doing them. So it's like, okay, What about Superman and Lois? So Schwartz clarified that despite how well Superman and Lois has performed, the decision to end the DC property came from Warner Brothers. They don't want a competing Superman product in the marketplace, Schwartz said, referring to James Gunn's 2025 movie Superman Legacy. So, people, as a result, are kind of, and I get it, being like, well, what the hell, dude? You've got literally the Batman Part 2 coming out. You got the DCU Batman, and I think we can assume if all does well with Part 2, Part 3 will come out. And I feel like, by the way, I want to say right off the bat with my perspective on this, I've always taken this to be the case with what Brad Schwartz said. Like, with Superman Legacy coming out, Superman and Lois wouldn't go on for too much longer. I've always said that this entire time. That is the reason. Because Gunn said way back when, he came in as head of DC Studios, Superman and Lois, this is the quote, Superman and Lois has got 1 or 2 more seasons, Gunn said. It's a show everybody likes, so it's going to keep going for a little bit. And that basically meant 1 or 2 more seasons because, if you pretend that the strike didn't happen, it could have actually have achieved 2 more seasons, but because of the strike, we're only having 1 more to end it. But the thing is, as to why it's now ending and why there's this, double standard, if you will. The thing is with the Batman, Matt Reeves most certainly already had his foot in the door in a very, 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 very major way. He has this first look deal with Warner Brothers. The Batman makes a shite ton of money, almost $800 million. Say what you will, and I'm not playing favorites here because I love Superman and Lois to death. It's basically, I think, one of my favorite, if not favorite, Superman adaptation in the way it kind of encapsulates all that, but this isn't a review. There's a difference between an $800 million movie plus, multi-million-dollar franchise, I think, and what that can bring, and Superman and Lois basically being a thing that's been going for a while, multiple seasons, so you can almost basically cap it off with a final season wrapping up the story, whereas Matt Reeves being this massive filmmaker and massive desire from Warner Brothers to even get that first look deal for them, with the potential of the success of the Batman 2, the only way to put it, and it's not the easiest or nicest answer to say from my perspective, is that all while Superman and Lois is successful and, the CW basically would like to keep it going, it's a little bit easier to kind of sweep out the door, if you know what I mean, when it comes to thinking about multiple series or projects, if you will. That's what I should say, projects with the same character. But the thing is with Reeves, they'll let him do his thing, do the Batman Part 2, maybe Part 3, maybe not greenlight a bunch of other spin-offs. That's one thing to bear in mind. But then they'll fully embrace the DCU as kind of like the mainline, it already is going to be embraced as the mainline canonical DC universe with, canonical DCU shows, Lanterns. Like, if you want a DC show, it's in the DCU now. There isn't a Superman and Lois or a Penguin, it is the DCU. That's basically, I think, what they're going to really hammer down on once the Batverse has kind of been and gone, which is still years and years away. But I just feel like Batman, or the Batman, if you will, gets a teeny bit of a pass when, as I said, it comes to sweeping something out the door if you don't want too many characters of the same thing, whereas Superman and Lois, I think, bites the dust there because, I guess, optics-wise, they just want to have and go ham on the major Hollywood movie beginning genesis, if you will, of their new Superman. Whereas they're not just going to yeet Batman out the way because they're doing a DCU Batman. The Batman itself has a lot of promise. Whereas, again, I'm not saying that Superman and Lois doesn't have promise, but if you kind of read between the lines, if you kind of open them up, you kind of see what I mean there. They're not massively or accurately comparable, since you're kind of not, I guess, product-wise, on that level, they can kind of be like, you've already had a few years, right? You're on your 4th season. Maybe we can say goodbye to you. Whereas the Batman's on his first movie. Well, it's about to start his second movie. It's a lot more profitable. It's a lot bigger for the brand and stuff. So, we're going to kind of keep that going. I'm sorry. But again, in the future, I think when it comes to DC Batman, and by the time the Batman Part 3, let's just say that does get made because the Batman Part 2 is very successful, I think they won't be greenlighting loads of other Elseworlds Batman projects. I think the DCU Batman will be the focus. Does that make sense? And that's what I mean by they're letting Matt Reeves basically finish his work, and then they'll, I think, go ham on the DCU, and then any Elseworlds story that happens, I think, as James Gunn said, will have an extremely high bar to meet in order to sign off and greenlight whatever project that's going to be. So leave me any and all thoughts down in the comments below, and the same goes for every single story in this video, because that is where we're ending today's news roundup. Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. If you got this far, you know what to do. Tell YouTube that you're enjoying the BobaTalks channel, and you can do that by hitting the like button. Seriously, that's all you need to do. I mean, you can do something extra. If you're not already subscribed, you can hit the subscribe button, double check it, just in case you're not subscribed. You may think you are, but YouTube may have shown you my video a couple of times, making you think you're subscribed, but hey, you might not be, so double check the subscribe button. But that's everything, guys. Absolutely everything. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see people of the DCU in the next video. Goodbye.